So thanks, Ben, for being here. It's a pleasure to have you here. We're live on the stage. We have a little bit of an audience here. We're just concluding the Patent Masters program, which you are a part of. So thanks for coming to that, and it's good to talk to you.
Well, thank you so much. I'm glad to be here, and this is my second IPWatchdog event, and hopefully much more to come.
Good, good. So let's start. I always like to start where I think the beginning really is, and from our perspective in the industry. How did you get involved in this industry? Everybody's got sort of a different path they took from where they used to be to where you are here today, and I find that interesting. So let's start there. How did you get involved in working with inventors and being a part of the industry?
So I actually got started in college. I had a project, a family friend of mine who had a product that he needed help with, and I was in engineering school. So went ahead, used some CAD software, really loved working with CAD. I actually was teaching CAD at the time in college as well, an intro class, but still. And then with that, I designed a product for him, and then I had a couple 3D printers because I was a nerd, right? Mm-hmm. And anyways, made a few samples for him, tested it out. He loved it. And then from there, currently that same product, he's sold about 80,000 units so far. That was back in 2014, so about 12 years now. So pretty decent success. And from there, I realized I could help more people, and I thought that this would be a fun side business. I did that through grad school. Did that when I was working with NASA, did that when I was still a professor after college, did that while I was director of engineering for a large pharmaceutical company, and then realized, you know what, I had more and more clientele that kept coming to me with more and more elaborate products, and I've had a lot more knowledge base from start to finish for any type of product. And I said, you know what, I ended up getting funding from an investor and started a business. And now we have multiple different engineers that work under us. We just bought a building and just slowly started getting into it.
So you work with individuals, startup companies to help them essentially, as I understand it, and if you disagree, just feel free to disagree and set me straight, but I would characterize what you do as sort of an industrial engineering for individuals, small companies. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Most of our clientele are individuals, those inventors out there who need help going to that next step and what that is. And depending on the product, that can vary dramatically. Now, that's stated for small businesses and sometimes even startups. Sometimes it's not product specific, maybe it's a process specific. We work with a biotech company that helped make a automated turntable system. I'm not going to go in huge depth with it, but it eliminated, or I shouldn't say that word, moved 2 of their employees to somewhere else in the facility and optimized their process flow. So sometimes these small and medium-sized companies don't have engineers on payroll. They can hire me or my company to go in and solve a problem for them.
So you help not only with innovations and products that might hit the market, but you help with processes as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So when you were telling me where you started, I think I heard you say you worked for NASA. Did I hear that right?
It was a research project for him, yes.
Okay, now I understand a lot of stuff that goes on. NASA is secret and can't be discussed, but that's got to be pretty cool having had the opportunity as an engineer to work for NASA.
It was actually a dream job for me growing up. And then in high school, I realized that most NASA engineers don't get paid a lot of money. So that, you know, kind of hindered my want to some extent, or maybe not the want, but the need to do it. But me doing a 2.5-year research project with them did help me to satisfy that want growing up. And also, went to Langley, saw all their machines, worked with their engineers. I was able to do a little bit of everything during grad school and after grad school as well. It was a very, very interesting process. That's for sure.
I bet. So what discipline engineer are you?
Undergrad is mechanical engineering, and my master's is aerospace engineering.
Okay, well now that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, why you would go to work for NASA. So, all right, so let's pivot just a little bit. What, if you had to put your finger on it, what is the most common question that inventors ask you?
Well, the number one thing I get asked all the time is, can you sell my patent? But it's not always that simple. Normally you need to have a proof of the product that's functioning. And then not only that, you need proof of sales. You know, even though it's a TV show, you know, Shark Tank, the first thing they always ask is sales, right? And it's true, right? If you don't have sales, it's very hard to license a product or idea without having any proof in the pudding.
Yeah, we were talking about this the other day. I think Shark Tank is great. And the first two questions they always ask, do you have a patent on this? When it's a tangible product. And how much have you brought in revenue? You know, what are your sales? Does anybody want this? And one of the things that when I was working with individuals in smaller businesses, would always encourage them to do is to go out and sell whatever it is. And they're like, well, I don't want to sell it. I don't want to make it. I don't want to be in business. I want to develop and I want to license it. It's like, I get that. Okay, I understand that. And then I would say, but you got to sell it. And they're like, well, I don't have the wherewithal to go over to China, and I have to order 100,000 units to make it economical to come in from China and get it imported with the manufacturing and all that sort of thing. I'm like, you're missing the point here. Make it in America. And then they would always say to me, I can't sell it for as much as it would cost me to make it. I was like, you're not trying to make money. You're trying to get 100 units, sell them. I don't care whether you make money. I understand you're going to lose money, but that proof that you had 100 people want to buy this is going to be useful information. Do you find that inventors struggle to understand why that it matters?
Yes. This is one of the services we do in-house. So we are an engineering company. We design, develop the product. We get it ready for mass manufacturing. But to your point, a lot of our clients don't want to go to mass manufacturing. Mm-hmm. So what we can do in-house is we also can do small batch manufacturing, even if that's metals, plastics, fabrics, circuit boards, whatever the case may be, so they can test the market. And let's just call it a blue widget. And that blue widget costs them $100 and they're selling it for $100. They're in theory net zero, but they can make 100 of them, or we can make 100 of them for them, and they can sell them and see if there's a true need. I also recommend people to, while they're doing this, work on different platforms, maybe Kickstarter, etc., and to see if there's also funding out there for even pre-sales during the development phase, or if they have a few prototypes. It's not a bad option to see what the need is out there. It's not the only solution, but it is also a good metric to gauge sales and interest in that product.
Yeah, and it lets you, if you have 100 units or 1,000 units or whatever it is that you can run initially, it gives you an idea how fast did you sell them,
right.
How hard was the sale, and then it also gives you additional R&D, right? Because now you have that, whatever that is, which is first generation usually, maybe second generation, in the hands of 100 different people who can maybe give you feedback, maybe help you understand how they're using it, where the weak points were, the strong points were, and all kinds of things. It's very useful information. Now, the Kickstarter thing is something where, boy, that can be a double-edged sword. And particularly, you got to have some patent protection filed before you do that. So do you find that people are filing provisionals, the people you're working with, or are they bypassing the patent system, or what are they doing?
So I would say 60% of my clientele are individuals or inventors. With those 60%, I would say also 60% of that already have patents, or they've already filed for their patent, either a utility, design, provisional, or non-provisional, depending on where they're at. So no, I never recommend putting something out there without some sort of security in that sense. But for most cases, they come to us right as they've just finished filing, or right before they're going to file. And it takes a couple months to design something, even if it's basic. So a lot of times I recommend working with the attorney earlier on the stage generally, so that whenever we're finished with the 3D modeling or the firmware or the electronics or the overall function of that product, it's the same drawings that are used in their patent as their product. Even though if they go to R&D, sell 100 of them, make some tweaks, at least it's as close to the actual product as possible and how it physically functions.
So that raises another important question, is the timing issue. So from your perspective, when is the right time for somebody to come and say, hey, Ben, I need your help? Is it after they filed? Is it before they file?
I think that depends on the individual or the company. If you're somebody who just has an idea and you go immediately to a patent office, an attorney's office, and you file for a patent, there are certain situations where that is not a good thing. If they have not made even if it's a rough prototype or something themselves, that they know that will work. And I'll give you an example. So we had a client, was that a year and a half ago, and I'm not going to name names or the exact specifications for it, but he was fully issued, patented, granted to him. He was ready for us to go ahead and make a prototype. We copied the design verbatim to the patent. Obviously, there's no dimensions, so we changed some of the dimensions, but it looked identical. It functioned identical. We even made it a little bit stronger. Strength wasn't an issue or anything like that. But it was the end piece for a ratchet tool for very compact areas to have that ratchet to go in. Think of if anyone in here has worked on a car and you can't reach that lug nut or bolt or whatnot. Well, the issue is that when you turn the ratchet, it rotated the whole system around the bolt. So you had no leverage on it had plenty of torque, but it was torquing your hand around on the bolt versus actually doing the intended purpose. And so this instance, he got a patent first and realized just that the pure physics of it didn't work. So it's a tricky question because we have a lot of partners of ours that are patent attorneys, and I don't want to say, hey, you need to come to us first. I never want to say that because it is very dependent. But depending on what that product is, you want to make sure that the product works before you do get a patent on it.
So it's tricky because of budget reasons, right? I mean, like if
Right.
you could sit here and say in an ideal world, the way it would work would be
Provisional.
you start with a provisional, you file it, maybe even you go to non-provisional. Maybe you want to get the patent for a variety of reasons very quickly, and you haven't yet built it. That's perfectly fine. But then you have to be prepared for once you do start to build it and then you do start to use it, that it may not be exactly what you thought it was. Perfectly fine, but the solution is then you got to file another application. Now, if what you're trying to build is a patent family or a portfolio, that's fine, but that costs money to do it that way.
Right.
And that's the way large companies would do it because they want a portfolio. So for a larger company who wants multiple patents to cover something, going in this step-by-step process and patenting the improvements that they see, and well, it didn't work quite as we thought, that to them is perfectly fine because that's what they're trying to do anyway. They're trying to build a fortress. For your smaller businesses and certainly for independent people, they want in singular, a patent. And if that's what you want, because you only have a certain amount of funds, I get it, but then there's a different right order involved, and maybe you need to get help. Maybe you need to have a confidentiality agreement in place so you're not giving it away to anybody or getting certain problems with getting a patent ultimately. But then you need to know more concretely about is this going to work before you go that patent path.
Yeah, we've had a few other products that it could work, but not the way that was outlined in their patent. And I understand from the attorney's point of view of why they had those claims, X, Y, Z, right? Because they did a prior art search and they realized, hey, this niche of this functionality is where we can have our best success for getting a patent. And I understand from the attorney's point of view. which makes sense. But then when the client realizes after they've received it, and we have to physically make that product, and we have to make it slightly different to make it work, which has happened a decent number of times, then either they have to do almost gamble for an equivalency, if that time ever came, or file for another patent.
Yeah. It's an interesting set of problems that you face when you're going down this path, because at a company, they will have the business people, they'll have the legal people, they'll have the engineering team, and they work together in a multidisciplinary way in order to move forward. And as an inventor or small business, you have to do it all yourself. And one of the problems, I think, is sometimes attorneys who represent, not to say anything bad about this, right? Because a lot of this, as you already say, is dictated based on budget, but a lot of times I think the patent attorneys will frequently focus on what can I get? I need to get you
right.
a patent and not the right patent. And sometimes they don't even know it's not the right patent. We had, over the course of this last few days here at our Patent Masters program, we had Dean on the stage, Dean Keebill, and he was saying that and he's chief patent counsel for Samtec, so they're a larger company. When he's doing this and sending this to outside counsel, he often will just draft claims. And he said, get whatever you can get, but the patent that issues needs to have this claim in it. And it'll be narrow enough that he's been in the game for a long time, so he knows what he can reasonably get and what, but I need that claim because that's what our people are going to make and that's what our people are going to sell. And sometimes on the small business side or in the individual side, they need that person like Dean to say, no, we have to have that. All these other stuff is nice, but you got to get us that. And unfortunately, that's missing a lot in the when the individual goes into this process.
Absolutely. And not only that, but maybe we get the prototype to work exactly how they want it. Maybe they get the claims that oversee everything that they wanted to, functionality-wise. But then you realize that the competitors that are, even if they're indirect competitors on the market, are selling for half of what you could do because you overcomplicated it, and mass manufacturing is not optimized. So one thing that we do and we work with our clients on is we have partners for just about anything that they need, from licensing to manufacturing to patent attorneys to et cetera. And I can bring in those partners to consult with all of us together to make sure that, hey, this is a manufacturing facility that can do 1 million units a month of this, and this is what they recommend. And hey, the attorney says, hey, that's great, but as long as it needs to be within this, these claims here. And then from an engineer, I said, all right, well, let's take these together. We'll do this here, everybody's happy, the client's happy, and he has the best success for selling it. And one last thing I guess I'll kind of mention on this is if all that checks the box and you have initial sales and you're looking for licensing, sometimes it doesn't even come down to your product is the best product out in the market. Sometimes it comes down, let's just say you have a baseball product, just throwing something out there, and it's a new pitching mechanism. We just finished this product, so that's kind of why I'm talking about it. And you're selling it to some sporting equipment company, and they're already selling something in their own space, but it costs $10,000, and this product's only $5,000 or $500, let's say, or $1,000. The clients will, is it a better product? It's cheaper, more people can afford it. Sure, all that is correct, but these companies are going and say, hey, look, we're guaranteed to make $12 million a year on this product, or $30 million, whatever that number is, right? They already know they're going to make this because they made it last year, and they're going to have a net increase of 8 to 12, whatever that percentage is each year. They know they're going to make that. Starting and selling another product, they're going to lose those sales because if it is a better product, they're not going to make money on their other indirect competition with their own product that they're trying to license out. And now they have marketing, they have tooling, they have everything. They may have $2 million, if not more, depending on the product, that they're going to have to invest. When are they going to see that return? So sometimes it could be a better product, it could be cheaper. They may even have a bigger profit margin per unit. But if they have to sell more and their customer acquisition costs are higher, or whatever the case may be, it's not going to be the engineers. They're going to say, hey, this is good. We can make it for 100 and sell it for 1,000, and that's great return. It's not going to be even the higher ups on the board. It's going to come down to the financing guys, purely, and the marketing people. Those are going to be the two people, or branches, or departments in that industry, in that company, that's going to tell you, hey, yes or no.
Yeah. Better, stronger, faster, cheaper. You immediately think, oh, there's going to be a market for that.
Right.
But, and I guess I hadn't really thought about it quite like that. But as a business person, the numbers have to work out. So if it's better, stronger, faster, cheaper,
less risk,
I'm going to sell more. Okay, how much more am I going to sell to make it worthwhile to go to market with that product versus another product where I already know it's maybe not as many people will be able to afford it, but that you're trying to maximize the pot of money as a corporation.
Correct, right. And if there's risk associated to it, because these pitching systems have been around for, I don't know, maybe I have no idea how long those have been around, but they've been around for a long time. They work, they're simple, but they're the cheapest one's 5,000. They go all the way up to 20, 30,000. So if this guy's selling for 1,000, they're going to have to sell more units, at least 5 to 20 more per of the same, depending on, I guess, their ROI for each unit. But it's going to come down to a numbers game.
Right. It may not be economically viable because the market may not be big enough. And that's one of the things that I have always seen. Inventors, they don't understand how to figure out market size. And I can't say that like I got a PhD in determining market size, but there's an awful lot of information that if you start to ask the questions honestly of yourself, you can get good information from like the census. I mean, the census data is available. I have an example on IPWatchdog on an article that I wrote many years ago, just saying, okay, let's say you have a new baby product. Because I had invented a baby product that we didn't ultimately move forward with, because if you've never invented in that space, you don't realize just how many regulations there are in order to make a product work. So I came up with this. I'm sure it would have sold some. I don't know how many it would have sold, but I was like, how big is the market for something like this? So I sat down and I'm like, okay, well, I found in the census data that I was looking at, okay, well, 20% at the time, 20% of Americans live below the poverty line, which was news to me. I guess I didn't realize it was that high a number. Like, well, take those people, none of those 20% are going to buy this product, because it was going to be more of a higher end luxury product. They also, inventors don't understand substitutes, because like, oh, there's no substitute for it. No, there's a substitute for it, right? Like if you don't have a spade and you need to dig a ditch and all you have is a flathead shovel, well, people say that's not a substitute. Well, yes, it is if you're willing to sweat a little bit more, willing to hurt your back a little bit more, right? So what are the substitutes that are out there that people will convince themselves are substitutes even if they're not, and you go through and you say, okay, so how many people for the product that I had come up with, it was not for infants, it was probably would have been relevant for maybe just say 1 to 3 year olds. Okay, so how many people any given year have a 1 to 3 year old, have children? And you have that number. And then you say, okay, well, once we sell one of these things, it's out in the marketplace, and there'll be a certain number of parents that are going to go and give it to other family members or buy it on the secondary market and that sort of thing. So I came up with, like out of at the time, like 308, 310 million people in America, that the annual market size, top line, may be 140,000 units. Top line number. And that's if we have 100% penetration to the available market after I've gone through all these cutoffs, right? I'm like, plus all the regulations you got to go through in order to do this? I'm like, I think my time is better spent elsewhere. And I think more inventors need to go through that kind of exercise. Is this mass appeal? And by mass appeal, I mean food, water, shelter, stuff that everybody needs. And if it's not, then you got to be honest with yourself. And it may be the greatest thing in the world, but there's just not enough demand for it.
No, and I see the same thing over and over again. And one of the biggest, I guess competition is almost yourself, because you came up with probably a great idea, right? I mean, it probably is a better widget. It might even be able to be profitable, maybe in all these other senses. But if it ends up costing too much, or there's other products on the market that might be cheaper and solve the same solution, you're lying to yourself. And, for any of the attorneys or anybody in this room who has worked with individuals, they come to you with their idea. It is the best thing that they have ever heard of, right? And and you have to think that way, but you also have to be realistic, to your point. Going through that's a great metric. And one of the number one things I tell people is, even before I even start working with them, is validate, validate, validate. That could be validation of the market size. That could be validation of where you're trying to sell it to. That could be validation of the physical product. You need to validate. In the automation industry, back when I used to design automation equipment at the pharmaceutical plant, slow and steady is fast. Okay? I'm not saying you need to run and then sprint and then walk and then crawl and sprint again. And sometimes it's going to be like that, but you need to just do a steady walk. Make sure you're doing all your checks and balances, and you're validating, validating, and validating. So if you do get a provisional patent starting off, or if you already have a patent, or whatever the case may be, and you can start to be a little bit more open about your product, right, to the market, make a rough prototype. And I'm actually having a book coming out. There's 3 types of products that I talk about. There's looks like products, which could be clay, cardboard, whatever, and it looks like what you're doing. It may not function completely, but it looks like it. Then you have a works like product, which is exactly what it sounds like. It works just like the final product's going to be. And then you have your MVP, your minimal viable product, which is a little bit more refined / production prototypes. And with that, those prototypes, you can do validation not just on the physical prototype, but also, are people going to buy this? So you have to validate every step of the way. And if you end up doing that, you'll save yourself either money or money down the line.
Yeah, because it all comes back to sales. If
Right.
there's no demand, you're not going to make money if you're trying to sell it. And the person who you're trying to license it to has the same questions. They need to be able to make money. And the biggest hurdle in their mind is there any demand for this to begin with? And often the answer is, unfortunately, no. And I think we're putting our finger on right here, right now, one of the underbelly of the industry to some extent. And I'm not going to name any particular companies, but everybody who is familiar with this space knows that there have been a history of scam operators throughout time, preying on inventors. And I think the way that this whole thing works is, and you kind of alluded to this is their invention. This is their baby. They look at it like that. And along the way, so many people, for some valid reasons and for some not valid reasons, family and friends will say, no, that's stupid. Don't do that. Nobody will want that. Nobody will buy that. The first person that tells them it's a good idea, they're like, oh my God, somebody finally gets it. They finally understand. They see my vision. Now, if that person who is one of the scam operators who is in business to get you to pay me lots of money to help you get this to market without any care about whether you're going to make any money or anybody's ever going to want this, that's how this slippery slope happens. And for the life of me, I have given up to a large extent trying to write about these problems for inventors, because I don't think it mattered. And many years ago, I'll give you this for instance, I was speaking at an inventors club in Manhattan, and there was probably about 400 inventors in the room. And I asked them, if I told you there was a 1 in 3,000 chance that you would make more money selling this than you paid me to help you sell it, how many of you in the room would be convinced you're the one, not the other 2,999? And every inventor in the room raised their hand saying, I'm the one. And I'm like, so there's just no way that you can help these people, because some of the operators, those are the numbers, and some of them aren't even as good as 1 in 3,000. Now there are others that I think provide a very legitimate service, and they're very honest, and they help the people that they can help, and they tell people what the real problems are and so forth. But inventors often don't want to hear that reality. They want to hear, oh no, this is the best thing since sliced bread. And it's often not.
For us at least, it's about 5%. So definitely a lot, but much better than 1 in 3,000. But that's not always because of the product. Sometimes it is, for sure. Mm-hmm. But sometimes it's somebody gets their patent and they get a prototype, and that was their accomplishment. Now it's up on their shelf, and they say they invented something. Mm-hmm. They're not willing to go that next step, what we were talking at the beginning of doing sales, even though we alluded to that in the beginning, that, hey, you're going to need to do this, right, to get this on the market, to get validation that this is a worthwhile product.
So those who aren't in the industry don't necessarily know this, but if you're at 5%, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Nobody's at 5% success rate. Because I've had many people over the years tell me, it's like, look, if we took all comers, we would be less than 1% probably, certainly less than 2% success. The way that you ratchet up that success rate is discriminating, and telling people no more often than you tell them yes. And the example I always use, my uncle was an inventor, and my uncle had 6 patents, and they became things that he just was very proud of that he hung on the wall, including one where he sold police equipment and military equipment, and he was, had a license to do so and that sort of thing, and had met a lot of people. And he had met somebody at a conference, and he was golfing with this guy, and he was at the Department of Defense at the time, long time ago. And he said, what we really need is we need a mobile grenade launcher. And so this will tell, if people who know this sector will get an idea just how many years ago this was. This is long time ago my uncle was inventing. He's been deceased for a long time. So he then set out listening to what this guy was saying that they needed, and set out over 6 months and invented it. And then he gets the patent filed, and then he calls the guy and he said, hey, remember? Yeah, I remember. I invented what you said you needed. And the guy said, oh, man, 6 months ago, we probably would have done a deal with you. But in the interim, there was a paradigm shift. And so now we don't need that mobile grenade launcher anymore, because if you set these things up, it takes time to set it up. You lob in a few, and very quickly the enemy can locate your location and then destroy not only the equipment but the personnel. He said, so we needed a mobile grenade launcher right up until this other company came up with this other thing that then jumped over that need to, now that's the shiny object that we want to buy for the military. Nothing he could have done, right? I mean, just sometimes you come up with the invention, somebody tells you what they need, you deliver it, and something happens in the interim because you're not the only one innovating. And so that is one of the many reasons why you're never going to have even a 50% success rate, really. I mean, you're never going to have a 25% success rate, right? And then the other thing too is a lot of folks, the first time they have a hiccup along the way, they give up. And I'm not one to suggest that inventors or anybody invest good money after bad. Sometimes the giving up is the right move to save capital for your next idea. But a lot of times inventors, I do think, give up a little too early sometimes at the first sign of difficulty. So there's a whole host of reasons why these things don't move forward, but 5% success rate, congratulations. I mean, that's a great success rate.
And out of that, I'd probably say 1% of total are very profitable. 5% is at least breaking even. They've sold some on the market. They've gotten a licensing deal, and they're not under. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, no, it's great. We have some golf products. One of them just launched about 2 months ago. Within 2 weeks, they went from like 3 or 4 million views on TikTok or Instagram, and he sold half his inventory.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks.
It's a good problem.
Yeah, right. And it's kind of a gimmicky-ish product. I don't want to say that in a negative way, especially if he's listening, because I love the guy. But it's a good product, but it wasn't something that was going to save lives. It wasn't something that is going to reduce sickness or have some sort of safety, or something that was on the market that it was more of a niche saying, hey, look, this makes your life slightly easier on the golf course. So it was a golf product. So, and then we have another one that's about to launch that's a electronic hot stone for massage therapy, but it's battery powered. And that took 2 years to develop, but that was more because change orders, them changing their mind from an app, no app, other instances, but we're finally getting on the market, and she already has a whole bunch of pre-sales. And right now we're in the middle of mass manufacturing, getting that set up. So there are success stories, and I also have stories where, someone came to me with a really good idea and they just kept dreaming. And the aspect of started off with 5 parts, ended with 67 parts. Ooh. Then we went to mass manufacturing to get quotes. It was like over $1 million. And he realized that you can't do that. We finally dumbed it back down to the original. And then he's kind of been stagnant because he had a back surgery, and there's life that came.
Life gets in the way.
Right.
Life gets in the way often, and it is interesting how these things wind up working their way through, and the various twists and turns that they will take along the way. But there's so much that stands in the way of success. And one of the things that has interested me throughout my career, not just as an attorney, but as an entrepreneur and business person, it is often difficult to get people to see the wisdom in buying something that they need versus buying something that they want. Because I feel like, and maybe there's got to be a psychological explanation as to why this is, but if they need something, there's a large portion of the population that is going to convince themselves, as we've already talked about a little bit here today, that a clearly inferior product is a substitute. Or I need this, but if I just willing to have it take 2 or 3 times as long, I can do that same task with something else. Like, could you drive a nail with a wrench? Sure. You got enough determination, you could do it, right? But it's going to be a whole lot easier with a hammer. But explaining that to get that point across sometimes to the consumer is very, very difficult. So I have always encouraged inventors also to look at some of the things, like don't sleep on like fishing or golf sports, because people always seem, even in a recession, to have money to do the things that bring them joy. So if you fish, you're always going to have money for the next lure that's going to help you catch more fish. If you golf, you're always going to have some money for that new ball that's going to go just a little bit further, or this club that has got a bigger sweet spot so even you can drive the ball, And those inventions are things that I think independent inventors, for example, small businesses, can really make money doing.
Pet products too.
Yeah, pet products. Oh my God, pet products, right? I mean, we have dogs. We're big dog people, yep. And people love their dogs, right? And they're willing to spend some money on their dogs. And so don't sleep on an idea just because it's not something that is a necessity. Because often, in my experience, the necessities are the harder sell, and I'm not sure I understand why that is. It just is.
No, you're right, and especially when it comes to hobbies like that, or call it love. If you're animals, I mean, probably most of the people in here who probably have a dog, if not a majority of them do. I mean, I have mine and I spoil her like crazy. I mean, I'm always, getting her the best food or, treats, taking her on walks, etc. I'm willing to spend money on her, right? Same thing in golf. People get frustrated because it can't be the clubs. I mean, it can't be me. Sorry, it has to be the clubs, right? So they're willing to spend money for that extra new putter, that new driver that makes you hit it, 20 yards further, because they're going to have to buy a new club within a couple of years anyways. They might as well try this out, right? Same thing for fishing, because any of these hobbies I've seen a lot of success in, generally speaking. Those are just about most of the success stories that I've done. We've done a lot of fishing products, a lot of golf products. We've done a decent amount of dog products, pet products as well. But those are the ones I've seen that have performed the best. Generally, car products I haven't seen do very well, generally speaking.
Well, that's a pretty saturated market too.
It is. Medical devices as well, but that's normally because of the FDA, and you have to go through a lot of regulation to get that through, and there's a lot of, and I have some resources to help you, but it does take time and money and a lot of regulation to get you to that end goal. Some other difficulties, I mean, necessities in general, like you're mentioning, have all been generally difficult, but we've done a lot of different types of products, more of those hobby and things that help your kids or pets, things that people are willing to spend, $100 to $1,000 and not think twice about it.
Yeah. The other thing too that I think a lot of inventors where they make a mistake is, in my own case too, where I invented something that related to baby product, just generally, right? Like every new parent thinks that they've got a baby related invention. Now, when I came up with this, I was not a parent. I was observing what was going on with some other of my friends so I maybe was a little bit more objective. But the one thing that is a common thread here is if you don't know the industry, you're going to make all kinds of mistakes, and you're not going to make the product right, and you're not going to know what the consumer wants. And that's not to say that, look, first-time parent, you can't be an inventor in the baby area, but you got to do some homework. You got to get to know the industry, because people who know the industry they're inventing into disproportionately are successful compared to people who are on the periphery or observing in and they don't know it, and they're not willing to do the time and do the research to figure it out. You got to know what you're doing.
I 100% agree. If you don't know your industry, then you're not going to do very well. But I've seen a lot of people come to us with just a patent or an idea, and they want to just sell it. But I know that's kind of where we started this conversation today, but that very, very rarely happens. I can't say it doesn't, but it's very, very rare. So you need to validate it. Think if one thing that I tell a lot of my clients, so put yourself in the shoes of company X, right? If you're going to be buying a product, are you just going to buy a piece of paper essentially? No, you want that piece of paper to back you up. You're not going to hire someone who has a diploma in engineering or says that they're an engineer but doesn't have a diploma in engineering. So you do need that patent for validation, for security, even maybe insurance purposes, right? Depending on that industry. But you really need to look at it from their point of view. You want to see something that has proof of sales, that has security behind it, that solves a true purpose. Maybe it's recession proof, maybe it is a niche, but they know they can make a lot of money in a short period of time, and maybe go out with the next product that's coming out. So it really depends on that industry, but once again, validate, and you will have to do some sales.
Yeah. Well, great. This has been a great conversation. I appreciate you having it with me. Before I let you go, though, I want to give you an opportunity to plug this book that you have coming out. What's the title of the book?
The title is The Inventor's Playbook, and there's no sales in it or anything like that. I mean, you're trying to sell anything. It's more of just a guideline. It's about 135 pages, I think, 136 pages. And it goes through how to come up with a valid idea, how to market it, how to do prototyping. Even before going with a company like us, I always recommend people to kind of prototype on their own. Some people can't do that, and that's fine. But test test, validate before you go on to the next stage. It'll save you money. It'll give you your best success for selling your product.
Absolutely. And I would also say along those lines is invest incrementally only to the point where it continues to make sense.
Yes.
That means don't go and take out your child's college savings and put it all in the middle at the start. You invest a little bit. Did it check out yet? Did you maybe spend a little money for a patent search? Don't see anything that's going to block me. Good. Then spend a little bit more money. And as long as each step continues to be fruitful, then you invest in the next step. Don't go from zero to all your money on the table in the middle. If you're doing that, you might as well be playing poker.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
yeah.
Last thing, Ben, before I let you go, if anybody does hear this today and says, hey, I would really like to get in touch with you about maybe working with me on my invention, how can they get in touch with you? You have a website that they can visit?
Yeah, no, absolutely. You can reach us at inventionsunlimited.com. And you can go on there and check out, do a free consultation. We have NDAs on our site. We can use yours as well. So you can reach us there and shoot us a call or an email.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ben, for being here. I really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.